Hey, what's up, everybody? Of course, welcome to another episode of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration, along with music as well. Of course, I'm your host, King Von Jr. You can follow me on social media on Twitter at 301 King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One. You can also follow me on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can follow the podcast Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. I'm the social media producer for the unpopular. Well, now not unpopular. I'm saying that, but I'm the social media producer for Perfect Plex Talk Radio, hosted by a friend of the program, Mike Knotts, on Mondays at 6 p.m. And so, before I go any further, of course, I had the honor and the, pleasure. It was a great time, to celebrate my pastor's birthday, Pastor John K. Jenkins Sr., as he turned 67, so on Saturday it was a huge football themed, birthday celebration, right? And so it was a great time, tailgating, amazing food for free, by the way, it was definitely a spectacular event. Shout out to University of Maryland, Maryland versus Nebraska, and as far as that's concerned, it was an amazing time. I also want to say, let's see, but of course, I also want to say, and by the way, of course, unfortunately, Nebraska won though, but 34-31, it was a tight game, but yeah, but of course, as far as that's concerned, that's aside. I also want to say congratulations to the Las Vegas Aces for winning the third WNBA championship, and of course, Asia Wilson, became the Finals MVP for the second time out of three championships. And she made history as not only the first woman to win WNBA MVP four times, but she also is, the first woman to win, of course, WNBA championship, Finals MVP, regular season MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year all in one season. And the last time any player, regardless of gender, regardless of league, the last time anybody did that was Hakeem Olajuwon. During the 1993-94 season, when the Rockets won their first championship. So, Asia continues to put herself in top tier company. She transcends the WNBA at this point. So I have no problem proclaiming Asia Wilson officially as the GOAT. To do all this stuff before the age of 30, what else can you say? Outside of, may not have the same longevity as some of her predecessors, but that's going to come with time, and so when you look at her accolades, look at what she's done, at this stage, this peak of her career and things like that. The numbers speak for themselves. She's doing things that you would usually just see mainly for the men, as far as being as decorated as she is, as dominant as she is. You know what I mean? And it's funny how people want to play in her face and try to brush her to the side and try to erase her in favor of Caitlin and Angel. They'll have their time, but their time is not right now. So I like how Asia continues to control her narrative, and people who do that, really, got the game wrapped up, really got the game super wrapped up, to try push her to the side, like, oh really? Okay, got you. You know what I mean? And she's definitely the queen of the basketball throne right now, and so so as far as that, like I see, of course, nothing but the best for her. She's remarkable She's sensational, phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like you name it. Um, she's one of one. There will never, ever, ever, you know, be another like her. There's never been one before her. Right? I'm sure there'll never be another one like her afterwards. You she, completely transcends, supersedes, like so you just WNBA basketball period. If anything, I follow the WNBA mainly because of her. So, so as far as that, like I say, congratulations to the Las Vegas Aces. They have, certainly, etched their place as a dynasty when it comes to women's basketball. And on another note, of course, I want to say rest in peace to Diane Keaton. Of course, Hollywood legend. Of course, known for her roles in The Godfather. Father of the Bride. Was it the Ex-Wife? Ex-Wives Club. I think that's what the name of it is. But yeah, like among many other, movies and and everything like that. I mean, that was a complete surprise that just caught me off guard. RIP to, of course, also to D'Angelo as well. You know what I mean? And so yeah, we're talking about some devastating, losses in 2025. Like, I mean, 2025 alone has, had some, pretty, devastating losses, if you will. But of course, I will say that of course, I'm going to give, at least on a lighter note, I'm going to give my NFL recap. And so, going to this past week, the good old National Football League. As we do around here. And so, come on. This is week 6 of the NFL. And all right, come on now. All right, I got it right here. So yeah, so of course, week six starts off with Thursday night football as the Giants just completely pound the Eagles 34-17. Did not expect that at all whatsoever. Made the Eagles look like fool's gold. They said 34-17. And of course, as far as Sunday, the Broncos defeat the Jets 13-11, whatever. The Seahawks defeat the Jaguars 20-12. Chargers defeat the Dolphins 29-27. Rams defeat the Ravens 17-3. Man, they're down bad. The Ravens are down super bad without Lamar. The Colts defeat the Cardinals 31-27. The Panthers defeat the Cowboys, unfortunately, 30-27. The Patriots defeat the Saints 25-19. Like I said, New Orleans has not recovered since Drew Brees retired, and it shows. The Steelers defeat the Browns 23-9, as they should. The Raiders defeat the Titans 20-10. And of course the Buccaneers defeat the 49ers 30-19. One day after Steve Young's birthday and the day right before Jerry Rice's birthday, San Francisco comes up with an L. Nasty work. And then of course, as far as Sunday night, of course, another primetime game. Like I said, of course, another primetime game is the Packers defeat the Bengals 27-18. And Sunday night football, the Chiefs defeat the Lions 30-17. Monday night football, surprisingly, the Atlanta Falcons defeat the Buffalo Bills 24-14. And right after that, the Chicago Bears defeat the Washington Commanders 25-24. And so now it is time to go into the week in wrestling. And so, of course, kicking off with Friday Night SmackDown. As we see that the Samoan werewolf Jacob Fatu made his long-awaited return to challenge Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship after Crown Jewel. So as far as that, like it was great to see that. After extended absence, and of course initially, like immediately snipped out, Cody as his next competition. He wants to be next on Cody's, you know, list of challengers. And we also saw that, we had two title matches on SmackDown where Sami Zayn defended his United States Championship against the newly rebranded Shinsuke Nakamura. As Nakamura is back with his old theme music, thankfully, just like our Oscars, back, of course, came back with her theme music. MFTs set the sights on the YS6 after Tama Tonga made his long-awaited return as well. And I like how Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, they came back with the face paint from New Japan, like great to see, and so of course, like I say, of course, Cody kicked off SmackDown, echoing Paul Levesque's sentiment, what I mean, aka Triple H's sentiment about being the company's first string quarterback. It's football season, why not use football lingo anyway? He reminded everybody that Seth Rollins at this point was 0-3 against him. Ever since he made his return to the company, and of course, like I say, that's afterwards. That's when Jacob Fatu approached Cody about challenging for the title, and so Nick Aldis pulled Jacob aside, pull him to the side to chat, but the conversation didn't get that far because Drew McIntyre attacked Fatu. Then of course afterwards, Nick Aldis booked Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre, for the upcoming SmackDown. And so we see that, of course, Aleister Black defeated Damian Priest by way of 10 count in the last man standing match, and it was a pretty wild conclusion. As we saw, of course, Damian Priest and Aleister Black, fighting to the crowd, before climbing on an elevated platform. So as Damian was on the verge of winning before Zelina Vega, intervened, of course, Zelina pleaded for mercy, and of course, Damian, briefly lapped it off before it turns attention back to Aleister. So the distraction, was much needed as it gave Aleister enough time to launch a fireball in Damian's face, much like how that cameraman shot that fireball in Hulk Hogan's face at the 1993 King of the Ring when Yokozuna beat him for the title. You know what I mean? And of course, I think China had a fireball flash in her face or something. At one point, I believe it was. But yeah, that's just there you go. And so, matter of fact, Randy Orton, I think he even had had a flame thrown in his face as well. But of course, Aleister Black followed up with the Black Mass kick that just sent Damian Priest down for the count. And of course, the last man standing was Aleister Black. And so, in the U.S. Championship Open Challenge, Shinsuke Nakamura defeated Sami Zayn by way of disqualification after Tama Tonga attacked Shinsuke. And so Zakoa watched as MFTs beat down both of Shinsuke and Sami, and the thing is, of course, Sami and Shinsuke have history from NXT. Had one of the best NXT matches of all time. Looks like their sights are going to be set on the MFT at this point. The bloodline adjacent. And of course we have Tiffany Stratton and Stephanie Bakir, teaming up to defeat Julian and Kiana James by way of pinfall. After of course, after Tiffany hit Kiana with the prettiest moonsault ever, and for the WWE Tag Team Championships, the YS6 defeat the Street Profits by way of pinfall after hitting the plague on Montez. And so after the match, MFTs faced off with the YS6 as the new contenders for the WWE Tag Team titles. And so now it is time to get into, the crown jewels of it all. Of Crown Jewel this year took place in Perth, Australia, hometown of Rhea Ripley. She was the hometown hero, and Bronson Reed's also from Australia as well. And so, of course, and matter of fact, they went back to Australia for the for this next pay per view, of course. But of course, now with WrestlePalooza in the books, the WWE ramped up for Crown Jewel, and it looks like this was even better than let me slow. Like I said, it looks like it was even better than what WrestlePalooza was. I'll say it like this: if WWE kept the same energy from Crown Jewel, you know, matter of fact, if they applied that same energy from Crown Jewel and put it into WrestlePalooza, it would have been a much better show. What I mean, it would have been much better than getting a seat. That's for sure. Because now that you're on ESPN, they do not hold back. So they definitely judge, much harsher than than your own immediate circle, if you will. And so, matter of fact, pull up the other card right now. And there are definitely some surprises, and of course, the news has already come out, about John Cena's last match with the tickets going on pre-sale right now. Yeah, so let me go and look into this right now. So Crown Jewel, the matches on the card were Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes for the men's Crown Jewel Championship, Tiffany Stratton versus Stephanie Bakir for the women's Crown Jewel Championship, Bronson Reed versus Roman Reigns, Australian Street Fight, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky versus the Kabuki Warriors, and John Cena versus AJ Styles on John Cena's farewell tour. And after WrestlePalooza, John Cena definitely made his voice known that he wanted to face AJ Styles. He called out Triple H online, and so that's what it is. And here we are, and it definitely paid off. So the opening match was Roman Reigns versus Big Bronson Reed, the Walking Tsunami. Um, and so I'll say it like this, there's definitely a great match. A rather pretty solid match. It wasn't it wasn't necessarily a violent spectacle that WWE led you to believe that it would be, but definitely has some pretty fun highlights. And the winner of this match, rightfully so, in his own hometown, none other than Bronson Reed. So you definitely tell that the tribal chief, had a great time with the crowd. The crowd was even singing his theme song. You know what I mean? So of course it didn't take too long, before the fight was spilled out into the ring, into the crowd. And so the OTC, definitely remained in control for a while. And of course like I said, he had a great time playing to the crowd. Even grabbed the mic and told them to acknowledge him. And of course eventually, we saw eventually Bronson Reed got up and mounted his own offense, and so definitely became much more of a back and forth fight. And so of course, once Braun Breaker showed up to make the assist, that's when the Usos came in for the save. At least they thought they were coming in for the save. Especially with the table, just as Roman was looking to put the final touches on finish touches on the match. Then all of a sudden, of course, Jey Uso accidentally spears Roman through the table, and that was the beginning of the end as Bronson Reed ends up hitting the tsunami for the pin and the win. And Roman was furious. This is like Bebop and Rocksteady, causing Shredder to get beat by the Ninja Turtles. Roman and Shredder, the Usos are Bebop and Rocksteady. And Roman was pissed. He was like, look, I don't want to see you until Christmas. I was like, Yeah, my man was furious. He was like, and he was going off him. What he was telling him, they wanted to show everybody that he can do things on his own, and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, this is, I definitely like this type of storytelling. It looks like we're back into, I guess, the bloodline vortex, if you will. Um, so and the funny thing, there was some funny moments, like when Roman threw a ball of prime at Bronson, and then he also threw some rugby balls at Paul Heyman and Bronson Reed, before using a cricket bat. You know what I mean? So as far as I like that, then we also have Tiffany Stratton versus Stephanie Bakir, um, for the women's crown jewel championship, and the winner of this match ends up being La Primera, Stephanie Bakir. She got the victory with the corkscrew moonsault. Corkscrew moonsault. I say that right, to become the second women's crown jewel champion. And Triple H came out to present her with the belt and the ring for the win. And so, yes, of course, as far as that, let me see. And of course, we also have, and I'll say it like this, the best match of the night, without question. It's not even up for debate, not even a conversation. The best match of the night, easily, John Cena versus AJ Styles. This was a match where they had all finishers on. So this is definitely a spam finisher match, and I love it. You know what I mean? It was amazing. Usually people get annoyed. When wrestlers pull multiple finishes in one match, but in this case, since they were going out with the bang, this is John Cena and of course Cena and AJ's finale. Why not? You know what I mean? Like as far as that, I mean, of course they go all the way back to like 2016. When AJ was talking about beating up John Cena. So I would say like this. You would very much say that AJ's best dance partner since he's been in WWE has been John Cena. Because anytime they get into the ring, the chemistry is always on point. It's like they never ever miss a beat. There's 2016 SummerSlam when AJ won. There's 2017, of course, Royal Rumble when John Cena wins, at the time, record time 16th championship. What I mean? Like, and plus, when you look at the parallels of their careers, at the time that John Cena, was the face of WWE, AJ Styles was the face of TNA. So we have these two worlds collide, and now they're having one last dance, if you will. They brought everything, and I also like how AJ Styles brought back his old TNA gear. As far as like the old school TNA colors, phenomenal AJ Styles. Blue on one side, white on the other. He even had the old school AJ Styles vest. And even and the funny thing is, he even had the old necklace, if you will. I was like, oh yeah, they went all the way out with this one. That was an amazing intro. And it was definitely one of the most anticipated matches heading to the show, and for great reason. And they got into the ring to do battle, and that is exactly what they did. They both received a great welcome, but the crowd's reaction to John Cena naturally was even louder. They both had, special introductions from the ring announcer, and after that, they just locked in, and they were ready for war. There was so many different tributes and Easter eggs in this match. Like whether it was John Cena doing the Walls of Jericho as an homage to Chris Jericho, because there was even, as a matter of fact, one of Cena's more recent matches, he also used Edge's spear. But in this match, he used the Walls of Jericho. Of course, as an homage to Chris Jericho. Cena even used um, the arc, of course, Randy Orton's DDT through the ropes, as well as the RKO. Cena doing the RKO. Wow, that was not my bingo card at all. And he was even going for the punt, but of course, AJ knew better. He was like, "Nah, let me go and get out the way of this one." Otherwise, my career would probably be over after this. But anyway, so like I said, as far as that, and the biggest part, right, the biggest highlight was when Cena did Sister Abigail in honor of Bray Wyatt. That was the one right there. I mean, you want to talk about the most sentimental moment of the match? And he looked up in honor of Bray. I said, man. And the fans, how the had the fireflies came out. Of course, as the fans, fans lit up their phones. And I mean, that was the highlight of the match. Of course, we saw, like I said, Cena doing the AA as well. His typical moves as well. We also saw AJ Styles not only do the Styles Clash, he even did Sweet Chin Music. John Cena even did 619. Just everything, but especially with AJ doing Sweet Chin Music. And that was, of course, an homage to Shawn Michaels. I'm very certain that the AJ talked to Shawn, before that. And the funny thing is, I remember, back in 2018, of course, AJ shared a graphic, a graphic from a fan, a fan made graphic of him face to face with Shawn Michaels. And of course, that was him teasing the idea of facing HBK. But it was Shawn who turned down the match, and ultimately, would go on to take that tag match with him and Triple H versus the Brothers of Destruction. We all know how that turned out. Something that Shawn would rather, rather live down. But yeah, like I said, as far as that Sweet Chin Music, I'll go out on a limb, and I believe that the AJ did a better super kick than the Usos, to be honest with you. but yeah, that was clean. As soon as AJ started stomping his feet, I said, oh yeah, we in it right now. Cena also, of course, also had the choke slam and the tombstone, in tribute to the Undertaker, because Taker's last match was against AJ. Cena hits the tombstone. Of course, eventually followed up, by the AA attitude adjustment. And it was just like so many near falls. I was like, man, I just had to soak it all in. And with them, having this big send off like this, it almost reminds me of those back-to-back WrestleMania matches with Shawn Michaels and the Undertaker. Especially when it came to 25, and the reason why they went all the way out the way they did was because both of them had large major chips on their shoulders because of where they were placed by them. And of course that's because of where they were on the card, and that's why they delivered the matches they did. But I digress. And then we look at 26, the sentiment, of course, the sentimental value of that was Shawn's, like I said, with Shawn's last official match, things like that. And so I use those examples, to tie back to this Cena and AJ match, because like I said, because of the fact that Cena's, on his farewell tour with only a few dates left, he definitely wrestled with a massive chip on his shoulder. And AJ Styles is on his way out next year, himself. And so they was like, you know what, let's go and put everything on the line no storyline, nothing. Let's just have, like I said, just pure grapples. You know what I mean? It's, of course, as Kaz would say, this is for the graps. You know what I mean? This was just straight up for grapples. Um, and they exceeded expectations. Um, and for 30 minutes, they had the crowd eating, I mean, feasting out of the palm of their hands. You know, it was mind blowing. That's all I have to say. And so, like I say, as a matter of fact, there's a list. I even found there's even a list of the finishers that they use in the match. Cena hit Miz's skull crushing finale. Excuse me. Cena hit Miz's skull crushing finale. AJ Styles hit the Scorpion Death Drop, of course. Um, but of course they never mentioned Sting by name. Cena even used Rusev's accolade. AJ Styles used the Coquina Clutch, which is Samoa Joe's move, his TNA rival. Cena, of course, used the Walls of Jericho and Sister Abigail, like I said before. AJ Styles even used his arch rival Christopher Daniels' Angel's Wings from TNA. Cena, of course, as I said before, the RKO and the rope hung DDT. AJ even used Cena's own attitude adjustment against him, the AA. AJ, of course, Styles also hit, Kazarian's Fade to Black. Cena used Undertaker's choke slam. As I said, of course, as said, Styles hit Sweet Chin Music. Cena hit the Tombstone, and of course, finally put him down with the AA attitude adjustment. So they definitely, feasted in this match and raised the bar for everything else. Next up, we have the Kabuki Warriors versus Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. And Rhea, of course, Rhea, of course, being the other hometown hero that she is, Australia's favorite superstar, Rhea Ripley was up next, partnered with Io Sky to take on Kairi Sane and Asuka in tag team action. Rhea had, of course, she had the vest with the Australian flag on the back. Even though she started the match, didn't feel like the ball really started rolling until Sky got tagged in, and and of course Asuka, of course tried to offer a handshake, only to pull it away and only to pull it away and yell at Io, and so as Rhea and of course as Rhea and Kairi were taking breathers, Asuka and her former friend have a long sequence to themselves, and of course Io ends up getting the upper hand until Kairi got involved and helped Asuka send her to the ring post, and of course Io spent quite a while on defense while Kabuki Warriors double teamed her, and of course Io Sky Asuka both tagged out at the same time, and the crowd just lost it. I mean, exploded, went through the roof when Rhea Ripley came in, and of course it gave the hot tag, just like on a game, and of course this match we all pretty much expected it to be, and there was a lot of energy and physicality, and it was definitely very entertaining from start to finish. I would say this was the second best match in my view, next to the one right before that, with Styles and Cena, and there was no weak link. That everybody definitely carried their own weight, and so the winners of this match, were the Genius of the Sky, Io Sky and Rhea Ripley, and watched this Average Elementary episodes, MLB, MLB exclusive episode, if you will, But other than that, like of course we see last but not least, the main event. We saw Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins, and of course Seth Rollins finally got the monkey off his back, and got the win over the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. First time ever. Actually, you know what? I take that back. I would say that the best match for me would be Cena versus AJ, followed by Seth versus Cody, then the Kabuki Warriors. Kabuki Warriors versus um, Io and Rhea. But other than that, from top to bottom, this was by far better, pay per view or PLE, than the rest of Palooza. But yeah, like I said, the main event was the men's crown jewel championship. Um, as we see that Cody Rhodes has had a perfect 3-0 record. Of course, against the Visionary heading into the show, and uh, the American Nightmare himself, Cody came out the gate swinging. Came out hot and sent Seth out to the ring. Um, and of course, Cody came after him, but the Visionary took control. You know, um, started taunting Cody, and then of course every match these two have consistently been great, all three of them, and this is the fourth, so this is not an exception at all. So they're just natural dance partners. The chemistry is like this. Um, I wouldn't say that this was better than the encounters that they had before, but it was definitely a different story, you know. And this was all about Seth Rollins' desperation to not let history repeat itself. This was about his desperation, to not, um, to not let the losing streak continue. And he even tried to use Cody's watch as a weapon, but he couldn't bring himself to doing it. And so this allowed for Cody to take advantage of the opportunity and make his comeback only for a 2 count. And so they definitely, like I said, if anything, they definitely took some huge risks and made some close calls. And that's what Seth Rollins eventually used to watch as a weapon behind the ref's back before he hit the curb stomp or super stomp for the pin to become the men's crown jewel champion. So the streak is over. Of course, Seth Rollins is no longer losing to Cody Rhodes. So just when you think everything is in the clear, um, by the time we get to Monday Night Raw, that's a completely different conversation altogether. Because as we see something, a little bit of lag, if you will. These season ticket prices are crazy. Pretty much, as we speak right now. But yeah, like I said, as far as as far as Monday Night Raw, things kicked off with of course with the Vision, starting off the show, and you could definitely tell Seth was absolutely talking reckless, you know, um, saying that saying that he did all this by himself, and didn't need the help of anybody else, and talking about how Roman, somebody like Roman always needed help and all this other type of stuff. But last time I checked, Seth used to have J&J security, so and and so and with the way he was talking and the way he carried himself, it definitely rubbed the rest of the group the wrong way. And you could tell by the body language something was about to be up. You know, at this point, the group was starting to sort of run their course, if you will. And the thing is, like I said, you could just tell the body language that they were over it when it came to Seth. Like, you know what, you know, um, like, yeah, you know what, pretty much had it. And this episode of Raw surprisingly actually took place in the morning. You know, um, like at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning or something. I'm like, come on now. But yeah, like I say, of course, in the beginning, the Vision make the entrance consistent tonight of Seth Rollins, decked out in an overcoat of black and beige, gingham or at least plaid, Paul Heyman, Braun Breaker, and Big Bronson Reed. So they stand in the ring and let the crowd sing for a little while before Seth Rollins asks for and receives a microphone from Heyman, to greet the audience. He runs through his typical, spiel or stick, whatever you want to call it, says it's his vision tonight. It's about him. But wants to take a moment to recognize the greatness standing in the ring with him that he has assembled. He starts off with Paul Heyman doing his own version, of Paul Lee's intro, saying, ladies and gentlemen, his name is Paul Heyman, and so I was like, that might have been a little bit of an indicator right there. You can just tell by Heyman's face, he kind of like, whatever. You could, that's definitely Heyman's job, and nobody does it better than him. You know what I mean? So that right there was already out of character anyway. And of course, he, like I say, does his own version of him as an intro for him and says he's blessed for being in his presence and gives him a hug. Then the crowd eggs him on to give him a kiss, and Seth gives him a little kiss on the forehead and says there's no shame in, shame in having that kind of love. And so, of course, he moves on to Braun Breaker. And of course, he tells Braun to bark. Of course, after after the crowd boos, and and of course, asking Braun to give him a little head shake, and so you could definitely tell Braun was, he clearly didn't want to do it right away, and of course, eventually, Braun Breaker takes off his glasses and does it. And so Seth says that 6 months ago, there are rumors of his potential, and now under his vision, Braun has flourished and become everything he thought he could be and more. And Breaker is without a doubt the undisputed future of the industry. Zero lies detected. And then, of course, Seth moves on to Big Bronson Reed, the Auszilla, Australian Godzilla, if you will. So 6 months ago, Reed was on the shelf and couldn't beat Roman Reigns. Of course, this gets the crowd to start singing, singing Roman's theme, and Braun Breaker conducts them both. And then, of course, Seth says with his vision, Rollins gave him every bit of knowledge he had about Roman Reigns. Not only did he beat him, he destroyed him, embarrassed him, and he is the new tribal chief. Of course, Bronson puts his one up, and nods, and Seth, segues only be greeted by CM Punk chants. Says he has two questions. Pop quiz. He knows the crowd is very smart, but he's going to try anyway. He asks who's the greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champion of all time and why it is him. My answer would actually be Ric Flair, but hey, who's counting? Anyway, but whatever. Paul likes to say that there are levels to this game, and Seth claims that nobody is on his level right now. Says the difference between him and the other greats of his generation is that he doesn't need anyone to get his success. That right there. He says standing in the ring with three men who have been instrumental to his current, ascendancy, to his current climb. You know what I mean? I was like, man, and so I was like, okay, saying this while you have your teammates right there who carried you to where to this point right now. And so
try to do the next best thing.
And so of course, the crowd chants BS. Of course, Seth says he's gonna spit straight facts. Roman Reigns needed the Shield. Roman needed the Bloodline. Cody needed him to beat Roman Reigns, but he doesn't need anybody. Like, all right, then now you're telling on yourself, like you already, giving them a reason to, to jump. You say he doesn't need Bronson Reed. He doesn't need Braun Breaker. Doesn't need Paul Heyman. Beat CM Punk and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania on his own, even though, Heyman's, chair says otherwise. Like, come on now, Heyman was clearly his point guard, his assist man, to help him win that match. Like we all saw, I was in Las Vegas. It wasn't AI generated. Paul Heyman was the MVP of that match for Seth Rollins to win. Of course, I was like, man. And but yeah, so I mean, he already, he was already playing in everybody's face right then and there. So it was only a matter of time, before that time bomb would explode. So yes, of course afterwards, of course afterwards you saw Penta walking backstage and runs into Rusev, and Rusev says he should be having Penta's match, tonight, but Baby Dom, cheat him out of the title. But he's going to allow it because he's already spoken to Adam Pearce. He's going to get the winner of of that match tonight. And so of course we see a Dominic Mysterio versus Penta for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Excellent match, by the way. Um, the winner by way of pinfall with a frog splash is, Dirty Dominic Mysterio. Of course, goes on to retain the Intercontinental Championship. So of course we saw LA Knight being interviewed, and he says CM Punk is his partner tonight. He might get himself punched in the mouth or pinned tonight, but if you ask him, this match isn't for the number one contendership, for the title. And when he wins, he's going to pin Seth 3-0. Or CM Punk rolls up and says, "Last, like I said, of course, like I said, that's when Punk and LA Knight guy get into it, and we see Kyrie Sane chilling in the green room when Oscar comes storming in to beat Raider about losing their match on Saturday, and blames her for Io Sky still having disrespect in her belly for it. And to the point where Oscar even slapped her. I was like, oh, yeah. And the seeds are being planted right now, at this point. But of course, we have Kyrie Sane versus Rhea Ripley. The winner of this match by way of the Riptide is Rhea. And of course, after the match, Oscar attacks Io, while she celebrates Rhea's victory, and those to the ring post. You could definitely tell this is, they officially call this friendship with Rhea and Rio. It's definitely confirmed. I mean, I could certainly confirm it, but like I said, of course, Oscar attacks Io while she celebrates Rhea's victory, and hop up on the apron. Ripley boosts the Empress to boots her to the floor and clears the announce desk. And so, of course, she bounced Oscar's face off the desk, and as she pulls her up with for the Riptide, Kyrie Sane attacks Rhea with the kendo stick, and of course, Oscar hooks Rhea and spikes her with the DDT on the announce table as they stand tall over Rhea Ripley. The next step, we have our Big Bronson Reed versus Jimmy Uso, and the winner by way of the Tsunami is Bronson Reed. Then we have Bailey and Lara versus the Judgment Day, and the winners of this match by way of pinfall, Bailey and Lara with the Rose Plant, from Bailey on Roxanne Perez. And of course, we also saw that Stephanie Valkyrie was interviewed. We saw that Judgment Day interrupted, and of course, Raquel Rodriguez congratulated her before asking why she's getting all emotional over a title she never should have won. Of course, that's starts to plant the seeds, plant the seeds with Stephanie and Roxanne and Raquel, of course. And so we also saw that CM Punk versus main event Jey Uso versus LA Knight in the World Heavyweight Championship number one contenders match, and the winner of this match by way of pinfall with the GTS from Jey Uso is CM Punk. So he's the number one contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. After the match, of course, the Vision come down and attack, and of course, after the Vision clear CM Punk and Jey Uso, out the ring and whatnot. So, of course, like I said, after CM Punk was beat down, the Vision kick him out the ring as he stands tall, and Seth Rollins holds his World Heavyweight Championship. And as soon as he turns around, Braun Breaker spears him. I mean, Seth was talking all that trash at the beginning of the night, so of course, he reaped what he sowed. So, it's just like whatever. That's what happens. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And then, of course, Braun kneels over Seth Rollins, for a long time before turning to Bronson Reed and asking him if he's with him. And Bronson immediately gives a nod and pulls Seth over for a 747 splash. And of course, the Braun and Braun connection stands together. Paul Heyman was terrified. Of course, as Braun grabs by his lapel and pulls him up and says something the camera doesn't quite catch before, grabbing the world title. And then Paul Lee raises, the Braun and Braun connection's hands over, over Seth Rollins. Like I said, Seth Rollins did that to himself. He went from betraying Roman Reigns to being betrayed himself. So it's very, very little sympathy on my end, for Seth. So it's just like whatever. Um, and so finally, another thing I want to talk about, of course, with this NXT Women's Battle Royal, the winner of the Royal, of course, congratulations to Tatum Paxley. Let me see. Like I say, of course, for those that are watch online, thank you very very much for tuning in. And if you want to stream it, you could go on youtube.com /at Von Rex Jr. Please make sure like and subscribe, continuously, for more great content. And so now it is time for the NXT results. So I was like, yeah, of course NXT always knows how to deliver anyway. So if anything, last night I expected absolutely nothing less than the absolute best. And we saw Joe Hendry help Hank and Tank take down Dark State. Actually, no, that was a while back. My bad. So if anything, of course, as far as we have of course, with the Battle Royal to determine the number one contender for the NXT Women's title. We have Josh Briggs versus Matt Cardona, formerly known as Zack Ryder. We have Zarya versus Blake Monroe, and Lexis King versus Dr. Wagner Jr. And of course, Ricky Saints says he wants competition. After a quick recap of the NXT versus TNA showdown, Ricky Saints made his way to the ring. So he was tired of having to wait for a challenger and called out Trick Williams for a title match at Halloween Havoc. Trick showed up on the big screen via satellite and says not his fault. Ricky couldn't get the job done last week, which is ironic since Williams just lost the TNA title only a few days ago. Actually it was a pretty quick segment, just to set the tone, for their upcoming feud. Then we have Matt Cardona versus Josh Briggs, and the winner of this match, Josh Briggs. Then we have Dr. Wagner Jr. versus Lexis King, and the winner of this match, Wagner Jr. Then we have Zarya versus Blake Monroe. The winner, of course, the winner of this match ends up being Blake Monroe. Hank and Tank versus the Cullen versus Chase U ends in no contest. Then, of course, the main event of them all, the Women's Battle Royal. The winner of this match, Tatum Paxley. And I like the part of the match where Lash and Chikara or Marashade, finally had an encounter. What I mean? Like there's a brief reunion, if you will. I mean, if anything, I actually wanted to see them in that in an NXT Women's Survivor Series match. But whatever, at least they finally had to have finally got had an encounter since Chikara's release. So yeah, we had a brief metaphor reunion with Lash Legend Marashade in this match. We also saw the Hardys after being attacked by Dark State backstage. Carmen Petrovic, was in this match as well. So we had, of course, Jordan Grace, was in this match as well, and Victoria Crawford, formerly known as Alicia Fox. We saw Zarya eliminate herself to go help Sol Ruka after she was attacked by Blake Monroe, but she could have just gone between the ropes and then then back out, so it didn't count as an elimination. But it was an unforced elimination, which didn't have to happen. And of course, we had Kalani Jordan trying to eliminate Jordan Grace, which is crazy because she ended up eliminating herself too. Her handstand, the Kofi Kingston handstand that she did was pretty impressive, but it wasn't enough to save her. And it took 12 women to eliminate Lash Legend. I think that was the biggest highlight for me of this match. So so as far as that, I would say that that my favorite moment of the night or match of the night, was none other than the Women's Battle Royal. And also I want to say thank you to the Dudley Boys. As of course, as they've had their last match against the Hardy Boys on TNA, and the Dudleys gave the Hardys their boots and walked away. So so that was the official farewell. Thank you very much to the Dudley Boys, one of the greatest most iconic, legendary, game-changing tag teams, one of the most highly decorated tag teams of all time. If you want to, call them the GOAT, they definitely have that case, in more ways than one. Um, they were the quintessential tag team uh, of all tag teams. They are a perennial top five all time, in my estimation. You know, um, their legacy is set in stone. It's ironclad. So thank you very much to the Dudley Boys. For your many contributions and and just the mark that you made, the stamp that you left on this sport, on this industry, you know, um, has been absolutely remarkable. They are, you know, they're already Hall of Famers anyway, you know, um, and so for them and the Hardys to be the last of a dying breed, it would have been great to see Edge and Christian um, in there as well, but because you know, um, but because of the company that they're with, they weren't able to, to have that, one last hurrah, one last, send off with all three of them in the ring. But at least, hey, look, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Uh, so I mean, with everything that with the trail that the Dudley Boys, blazed, I mean, that speaks for itself. So I know I had to kind of pivot and and of course, I acknowledge that. I mean, it's too hard to ignore. But hmm, so now, what's that? Um, Also, I want have to bring this up, but it came across my timeline. Mm-mm-mm. I don't even know why I even want to give them any credit or any attention. But a certain publishing company came up with their top 25. The list is the list, like I said, the list of the top 25 wrestlers of the past 25 years. John Cena #1, Randy Orton #2, Roman Reigns #3, so on and so forth. Uh, you know, Stone Cold was way too low on that list. Shawn Michaels way too low. The Rock is in the top 10, whatever. He should be higher. Um, Seth Rollins way too high on there, like #8. Undertaker #6. Chris Jericho top 5. No, not at all. Rey Mysterio's #4, too high. Daniel Bryan in the top 10, ahead of Triple H, CM Punk, Eddie Guerrero, Jeff Hardy, Shawn Michaels, Batista, AJ Styles, Stone Cold. Like, all right, whatever. But yeah, like if anything, I would say, this motivates me to come up with my own, a list of the top 25 wrestlers of the past 25 years. And I've been meaning to come up with my own list of, the top 25 athletes of the last 25 years. Uh, so I'm thinking about doing that uh, somewhere down the line, certainly, before the end of the year, of course. But, but of course, like I said, Bleacher Report definitely gave me some ammunition. uh, but yeah, of course, like I said, on a lighter note, thank you very much to the Dudley Boys and for all their contributions and, and the imprint that they've left on the industry, you know. Um, but yeah, but other than this list, like I said, Cena, Orton, and Roman, whatever, not too bad. They're definitely very high in that conversation. Certainly move Austin and Rock much higher, within the top 10. Shawn Michaels, of course, certainly. When you talk about the last 25 years, even Shawn's second run, I mean, that right there solidified him even more. But anyway, like I said, I digress. So now it is time to go into the birthday segment. Like I said, of course, October 13th, so, like I said, October 13th, Sean Yancey's birthday, of course, local News 4 reporter. October 13th, the greatest receiver of all time, Jerry Rice, turns 63. On that same day, Ashanti turns 45. October 14th, Usher turns 47. October 15th, Genuine turns 55. Baseball legend, of course, Baltimore Orioles, three-time World Series champion, and Hall of Fame pitcher. Jim Palmer turns 80 on October 15th. October 16th, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Hall of Famer, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, turns 63. October 17th, Marshall Mathers, better known as Eminem, turns 53. On that same day, Wood Harris turns 56. And of course, on October 18th, October 18th, Chuck Berry would have turned Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, pioneer. Chuck Berry would have turned 99. Boxing legend Tommy the Hitman Hearns turned 67. And on October 19th, Evander the Real Deal Holyfield turned 63. And so, of course, on this same day, John Lithgow turns 80, and Thundercat turns 41, and Dorinda Clark Cole turns 68. And that is it, for the birthdays. And before I go, I'd like to give a word of wisdom: is that God used the ugliness of our lives to accomplish His goals. No matter what happens, God will take care of you. And when you count everything up, the good, the bad, the ugly, and indifferent, the main, of course, when God calculates everything all together, at the end of the story, you win. And so, of course, always remember that always remember you're victorious, because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that you download, podcasts. Of course, I'm also on YouTube, youtube.com/at West Virginia. And of course, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. And may this day be the absolute very best day of your life.